Hollow Knight is first, not Breathedge. Hollow Knight, not Breathedge. Hollow Knight.
Oh man, Breathedge is a game. It is a game.
Yes, that is an accurate description of it. And it wasn't a terrible game, but it's not Hollow Knight. Okay? No mistaking. Breathedge, not Hollow Knight. And hey, bored, waiting for Terraria Sunday. Hey, Angaria, always nice to see you here. Hello, lurkers. Hope your weekend's fantastic.
Hi, Pookie.
And hey, Pookie, yes. Do we have any news we want to go over yet? Did anything cool happen last week? The way the light is hitting your glasses right now, Pseudo, you look like Bubbles.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I feel like Bubbles, so I don't know. I've been so busy all week. I haven't been paying attention to news, so I have no idea. There's probably been something.
Yeah, I don't know what I saw either. So, on my levels, everything looks fine. Can people tell me, are Pseudo and Rage as loud as I am, or are they like super quiet? How do they sound?
Are we appropriately volumed?
Do I need to turn them up?
It sounds like we might be a little over top of you, actually.
Really? How about now? La 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 la
La la la la la la la.
Yeah, I heard the echo and fixed it right away. That's a bug in the OBS.Ninja that we use to capture all the scenes and put them all together. It's a known bug. I deal with it. It's a beta, but there's nothing. It's a beta thing that we're using to do this, but there's literally nothing else that's better to do it. It's just that good. So. Yeah.
I sound a little clippy. I don't know about Pseudo, but I'm going to move a little farther away from my microphone.
Oh, that's a rarity with that mic.
Yeah. Turns out the SM7B still really hard to drive.
Indeed. Okay, we've got all the regular spams going. We've got the most important people here. And I don't think there's anything really interesting happening in the gaming world, other than we were just recently talking about how Pseudo saw they were hiring for
another Respawn Star Wars project.
Yeah. Ooh. So we might get a follow-up to the Fallen Order, which would be cool, because we were actually really big fans of Fallen Order. I believe our exact expression was, this is really, really good for a first try.
Yeah, it's like Star Wars Sekiro.
Yep. Prince of
Persia.
Prince of Sekiro is what we typically called it. And yeah, I'm okay with that. Well, I guess we're not really missing anything. Nobody seems to have any news that they want to bring up. So let's just talk about Hollow Knight. First, impressions. I want to hear from chat. What did you guys think of Hollow Knight? How was it?
How many of you were actually here to watch it?
I don't think Respawn made the original KOTORs. I don't know if they'd be able to get the IP for KOTOR.
That was BioWare?
I think so.
I think it was BioWare.
And they kind of still around, though all of their people are in EA still, so I'm pretty sure EA still owns them. So EA has the IP, so EA could probably let Respawn use the IP.
Could. We'll see if they will.
Yeah. You're just thinking EA. Yeah, but there's umbrellas underneath EA, right? So this is in the Respawn umbrella, and they're not the KOTOR people. They're just not. So
I also don't think a modern KOTOR would work. I don't think people would buy it.
They'd need to improve the... I'd buy it.
Yeah, but we're not most people.
That's true. I'm not even a Star Wars fan, though, and I'd buy it. Just because the original KOTORs were actually that good. I don't know if you ever played them, but they were fantastic RPGs.
Oh, yeah. I loved them at the time. I just think there's a lot of rough edges on what they were doing, and I don't think that would fly these
Well, I don't think
days.
they're going to do it exactly the same, but I'd be okay with, like, a little bit of menu combat, watching the people move around, a little bit of free moving. I think it would work well still. You could make it work really well. And, Respawn really nailed it with their last project. I think they could do it. They seem to have the brains.
Honestly, I don't think Respawn has made a bad game yet. Like, Titanfall 1 and 2, unfortunately, did not do particularly well.
Did we forget about the VR game?
Oh, they made a VR game?
I think it was Medal of Honor VR that came out in December.
Oh, did they make that one?
Yeah, I did forget about that.
Oh, no.
Oof. Big oof.
Oh, no.
It's okay. VR is hard.
We blocked that out of our mind. Yeah, there's no standards. There's no nothing for VR right now. It's you want good VR games, you got to go to the indie developers where they're willing to take those big risks, because everything is a big risk in VR. There's nothing that no one works.
Yeah. So I think the biggest fault for it probably, because I watched a lot of gameplay because I was really interested in it, was that it just the price, right? I think VR titles just aren't at that AAA price yet, so it's a really big ask for people. And then when you put it at that AAA price, people expect a AAA game, which, the closest we've gotten so far is Half-Life Alyx, and even Half-Life Alyx was, $20 less than a AAA price.
Yeah. The closest to a AAA game I've played in VR was Arizona Sunshine.
I still need to play that.
It's a really good game,
an
actually.
HMD.
It's a really good game. It was a lot of fun, and it creeped me right the hell out when we were in the mines shooting up everything. Well, hello, Mr. Lowe. How you doing? Let's make a $200 million VR game. Sure, you fund it, board.
Yeah, bring us $200 million.
I'll happily make a VR game, and it'll be ace for that price. I promise. We'll do it right. All right. So the only person who had anything to say about Hollow Knight this whole time was Pookie. And that was, Hollow Knight looked hard. I'd say you were right, Pookie.
I'd say that that's a fairly accurate summation.
Though I did kind of mincemeat some of the bosses that other people had issues with. So I just do that.
I perceive it like a Souls game, though. Not that much of the game is very Souls-like, no. But that the bosses aren't the hard part.
There's some pretty hard bosses still.
Yeah, but how many times did you die to bosses versus how many times did you die in level traversal, right? Like, Hollow Knight has very large, and we're just jumping right in ahead of time, but it has a very large map, and a lot of it is very difficult to traverse.
Drifticult. It's like a big cult bus just drifting around a circle.
I'd pay to see that.
Me too. I want to make a game about this now, where it's just a bus full of cultists that you have to drift around, and every time you screw up on your drift, there's cultists go flying out of the bus, and you just go until your bus is empty. And make it really, really hard and call it Drifticult.
And I can see that working from like a top-down perspective.
Yeah, that's how I see it.
And then you just see them go, whee!
Yep, flying out of the bus and hitting things, and just little red blotches everywhere from the cultists flying out of your bus. Yeah. Okay, game idea done. We're done. Show's over. We're going to go make it.
I'm going to go build that game now. Burb.
Oh, okay, let's actually talk about Hollow Knight with world building.
World Knight and hollow buildings.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of hollow buildings, but that's okay. The ones that you could go into were lovely. World building. Let's start with our rating. Who wants to go first?
So I'm leaning good. I'm thinking good, but I could be convinced of a high okay.
I'm leaning good, and it would be very hard to convince me for a high okay. Pseudo?
Yeah, I was thinking about this quite a bit before the start of the panel, because like I like the world. I was just trying to think of how much of the world building was actually there, and how much it was just me just liking the uniqueness of the world that was presented mostly just through, looking. But then I started diving more into the actual kind of the characters that were in there, the places that you actually travel through, the actual kind of, mysteriousness of, what's kind of going on and how it's presented and how you kind of figure out like what's happened, why are things the way they are. And it's still hard for me to be like, what is the world of Hollow Knight? And then, when I think about it, I'm like, compared to most other games, there is, the Hollow Knight world. It is very distinct. It is very, not just because it's unique, but just because of, it's scoped for just, how this game was. So I would say they did actually do a good job at building their own world.
Yep. To extrapolate on that, I can look at a screenshot of an area and know what area it is, and also know that it's Hollow Knight instantly.
I mean, some of that is to do with the visual style as well, but the world building that they did really does leave an impression, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, which is why I'm leaning good. But I think there is an argument to be made for saying, quite a bit of it feels empty, and while that is intentional, that can also be something that is a detractor for a lot of people.
I did not get the empty feeling. I felt like there was always something around me going on. Even if there's no people there, there's signs that people used to be there, and or just obvious that people don't belong here. People don't own this place. Something else does. But I never felt like it was nothing around me. There's always lots of stuff around me. It's just not happy, friendly stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess what I'm referring to is like the places themselves, like the enemies that are in them and your environment can give you context, but you don't really get a lot of it spelled out for you. Like say, again, the series that we always love to go back to, the Soulsborne series.
And it's a good comparison with this game.
Yeah. The item descriptions in Soulsborne, for instance, like they go a lot deeper than Hollow Knight does, allowing you to piece together more of the past, allowing you to piece together, more of what had gone down to put things in the state that they are now. Whereas in Hollow Knight, a lot more of that is just left up to mystery, and you will never really know.
I put most of it together in my casual playthrough, though. Like the whole general arcing overall story. After I finished the game, I sort of spelled out what was happening for a couple people, and then the fans of the game that were there just said, yes, that's correct. So, I mean, there's enough there to get it on a playthrough. More than I got from my Dark Souls playthrough, even.
There's enough there, but there isn't as much there. If you catch my drift. It's more about degrees. And like I said, I still think this is a good. It's just like, how far into good are we going?
Yeah, as we're talking about this, remember that if there was something above good, we would have given that to Dark Souls.
Yeah.
It's really special. For Hollow Knight to be compared to it, even if it's not meeting that level, is saying something quite special actually about Hollow Knight. Just so you all know. But yeah, I felt part of the world while I was playing the game. I felt like I was actually exploring this bug world. And I learned a lot about what was happening. And it was opened up and presented to me as I explored. And if somebody loved world building in games, I would recommend this game to them. I think there is a world there to explore, and it's deep and interesting, and there's enough else going on with the world building to keep the challenge up as well.
Yeah, and like we always say, a good is it's adding to your experience, and the world building in Hollow Knight definitely does.
Yep. So, all you in chat, if you happen to disagree with that, say it now, because we're writing it down, so it's going to be set in stone. Speak now.
Until we go back and edit it.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, done. Unique and each zone is recognizable. In a casual playthrough, you can put together what is happening, but it will require some thinking. Thinking and exploration. What are you thinking? Characters. Who has comments on characters in chat? Start them coming. Now, Pseudo didn't say much about the last one, so I'm gonna give Bubbles this one to start.
Oh my god, my eyes again. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that. I'd have a hard time not giving it a good for characters. There's just quite a diverse cast that are there. The style of them all are great. The actual kind of like the uniqueness to each one, the depth behind a bunch of the characters I kind of enjoyed. It's not always the most deepest thing, but like for what the game is and what's there, I was pleasantly surprised to, find there's just so many. Then plus there's just so many bosses. And like the kind of, even though there's quite a few, they still all kind of have their own flavor, as well as they all can still pass that silhouette test pretty well. Going through the list of them all, you could easily tell, which one is which. If it was, you can't actually see them. They all have distinct features. They all either have different antennas or different horns or just a different shape in general.
Yep.
Doesn't seem like they kind of just took a template and just, okay, we have bug and now we just make all the other bugs off of that bug. They were like, we need, there's a lot of creative effort that went into this. So I'd have a hard time giving it anything rather than a good, but that's mostly just on the design of characters. There's of course quite a bit that goes into the, writing, the feel, the personalities and stuff like that. Which I find for the ones that I saw, I enjoyed. I don't think there's any, too much of an issue with that, but it's one of the things where I haven't been full versed in that because there's some parts that I missed. So I could understand if there was, some issues with that.
I found the writing for, I would say, all of the characters in Hollow Knight to be quite unique, quite interesting, and you could really get a sense of their personality through their dialogue, their actions. So to go along with that, good for the stylizing of the characters and the visual design of the characters, I would concur and say that it deserves a good for the writing as well.
I was actually on an okay for the characters, but after listening to you two, yeah, they're good. Yeah. The silhouette test is a really good point. Yeah, they felt, I don't know, maybe a little hollow at first.
No, but I do understand that. The writing is not hugely involved and you don't get a ton of it early in the game. And I think some of that at least is intentional because it's just like, oh, here's another bug that wants to be the king sort of deal. It's like, oh yes, go adventure. You're not special. Have fun.
But yeah, then I start thinking about it, and the old guy that runs the town that you first meet, very distinct, unique personality, recognizable, serves a role. And then the personality of the lady at the map shop, the personality of the map guy with his humming and his careless exploration, the personality of the actual shop at the town, the trinket lady, like it's actually quite wide. And then the one that I remembered that really pushed me into, oh yeah, it was good, was the crazy old knight.
Yeah, the crazy old knight's pretty good. I also really like the gruff bug that you ride around. I think he's pretty adorable.
Yeah, the spider-looking dude for the transport.
Yeah,
yeah. I said every single time I rode that thing, I was like, I love this animation. Okay, we got it good. I like it when we don't agree right away and then do.
Because our opinions are flexible.
All the characters pass the silhouette
No red squiggles.
Oh my god, I got it right. Wow! That's amazing. Silhouette test. They are unique, interesting, and have their own goals and driving forces.
Yeah, and if we didn't specifically call that out,
We did not.
in our talking points, like they do all have their own goals. They're all there for their own reasons.
Very, very, very important when you're writing characters. The first thing you do before you write your story, you have to know who the characters in the story are. Why? Hold on, let me fix my camera. For some reason, my Stream Deck profile didn't save the changes twice now. Webcam.
Read-only location? Maybe?
Nope. Because it usually does save the changes. There we go. Okay, we're back. There, and now it works again. Okay. There we go. Okay, so you're writing your story, right? Now, characters are going to be interacting with each other throughout your story. This is what creates a story. It's a series of events and interactions. Now, your characters cannot respond to an event and your characters cannot interact with each other until your characters exist as a full individual. So before you go just writing random story, you have to develop your characters properly. And to properly develop your character, you have to have wants, needs, desires, and goals. And these need to be individual and unique for every character. And once you have these defined for your characters, then when you put them into that situation, you can then think, how would this individual, as they're defined, react and respond to this situation? And this is how you create that natural, organic feel for your characters, where they make sense and they respond as a human does. I'll do an episode on story writing sometime. But the story is okay.
Yeah. Perfectly serviceable.
It's not a super interesting story. It's very mysterious, and the way it's presented and given to you is quite interesting. But once you get to the end and understand the story, it's like, yeah, that's a game story.
Yeah.
It's not like it's poorly done. It's just serviceable.
Yep.
It's not the main highlight of the experience.
It serves its purpose. It's fine. There's really nothing wrong with the story. It's just, if somebody wants like a super amazing story, this isn't the game I'm going to recommend them. And we don't want to give away what the story was, so we can't explain why. It runs on everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's been ported to like every reasonably modern system, and to my understanding, runs at 60 FPS on all of them? Question mark?
I'm pretty sure it would. There's
should,
nothing
hopefully.
Complicated going on. It's high quality animations, but it's nothing demanding. It's very simple assets. Even the lighting is very simple. There's no complex lighting or anything going on. And
Compared to like 3D.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing about 2D is as long as you're, I believe it was made using Unity, which is a very comparable engine for 2D. So they really shouldn't have any issues running that on most console hardware and PC hardware.
If you have something that can play video games, you should be able to play this at 60 FPS.
Default frame rate cap is 400 FPS.
That tells you everything you need to know. So, animation. Here's an interesting one. Because they're not complex animations, but they are wonderful.
Oh my, yes.
They're super simple.
the amount of character that is given to the sprites running around on the screen just by how they move, their idle animations, when you start engaging in combat, their attacks, the way that they jump and leap, and all their different abilities, very, very well done, all unique. I don't think there's much animation sharing between anything really.
Yeah. Other than the few instances where it's even story reason that the bosses are almost the same.
Yeah.
Because you fight the dream versions of the bosses. Yeah. So to bring up another Metroidvania 2D with fantastic animation, I just want to make this kind of comparison, because when a lot of indie developers or people who go to make their game try to imagine it, their imagination goes straight to like Blasphemous, where we're talking like tens of thousands of art assets to create that level. But I would say that Hollow Knight has as much or more character.
I would definitely say as much. I'm a little iffy on the or more.
They do go a little over the top with their death kill blow thingies that are amazing and add a lot, but they don't add character, they just add coolness. they're awesome.
Character.
They're awesome. But no, like they don't, there's everything's just, you look at both of them and you compare them and they're both fantastic. But Hollow Knight is much simpler, much easier to attain. It's just with a vision. Everything is towards a purpose. I think that's the best way I can say it. Everything is towards a purpose. Every animation means something. They all have the character of the character within them. Focus on your main character's animations. They're the ones people are going to see the most.
I love the idle animations on your bug.
Yep.
I think they're so adorable.
I loved all the animations on my bug, as simple as they are.
Yeah, the dash animation, once you start getting some of the dash upgrades, real good.
Yeah. A lot of the spells and stuff had simple effects on them and totally easy to attain without using a lot of resources, but looked good. So
yeah, whole lot of flavor and charm that just came from that.
Yeah,
you can tell a lot of effort and kind of fine detail went into that.
And it goes to show, for those people that want to do that project, what you can do with simplicity. You don't need to go super complicated. You can do simple really, really well. And you narrow your scope down on the art and you just focus on what you have. Adorable indeed, too cute to die. That's why you don't want to play it, Pookie? Because you don't want to kill the bug? So we're all in good then. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It sounds like everyone's firmly in good. Animations are a perfect example of what can be done with simple. You can use simple and still have tons of character. Yes.
And like the swing animation is actually like 3 frames.
Oh yeah, it's
but just because of how it's implemented, it's fantastic.
Yeah. This is why I always, even before I played it, I had seen like some scenes and animations of it and knew what it was all about. Like, wow, okay. I've pointed people to this as an example even before I had played it, and I'm so glad I got to play it. Who wants to explain why the style is good first?
This is a big job. There's a lot of explanation for why it's so good. But as Pseudo touched on earlier, obviously basically everything passes the silhouette test in the game. There's very few things that even look similar to each other in that sense. There's the fact that all of the artistic direction is very intentional and consistent throughout, but at the same time, you can very clearly tell by what parts of their palette they're using what area you're in. And like, when you're in the spidery area, there's cool gossamer spider webs everywhere. And then when you're getting down into the poison tunnels, like everything's green and lush, but also trying to kill you. It's the example of what you can do with consistency, a defined palette, and just a lot of dedication.
Yeah.
This is a prime example of an extremely dedicated team working off a consistent theme to generate a very unique and independent and what's the word I'm looking for? Identifiable world.
Yeah. I think you basically just covered that there. I don't
It's really good.
I don't know what more I could
really
add to that.
like Hollow Knight.
Yeah, no,
it's mostly just that like the consistency is just fantastic, especially with the color palette that shows it. It's not an easy color palette to work with because everything is so dark. But the way they even handled like the parallax effects and the backgrounds and stuff like that, because it's a 2D game, and if you're adding a background, you're adding the illusion of 3D, which is a lot harder than it seems to actually do. To actually kind of give that depth and still have it look good and still keep it within your style, because Hollow Knight has like kind of like cartoon-ish style, where it kind of feels like it's not so much hand drawn, but it does still kind of feel like that hand drawn feeling and style to it. And just everywhere you go, they kept it consistent. There weren't certain areas that all of a sudden just look a lot nicer and a lot more detail. Everything was just that that style. You could tell that they put that effort in to make sure that everything kind of matched and was consistent.
Yeah, everything matched, everything was consistent, and as I was saying before, every area was also unique. It's got that thing where if you look at a picture of it, you know what area it is and that it's Hollow Knight instantly. Every single one of them looks like Hollow Knight, and every single one of them is different. And that's not easy to do. Well, Rage kind of touched on it, but he didn't say it that way. He was talking about talking about the specifics of each area, with like the forest or the poison area being all lush and green and growing, and the spider area being covered in webs, and then the worm area. Oh, the worm area.
And I love the use of bright colors as well, because so much of that game is dark. And then you come into an area where they're using some of the brighter parts of their palette again, and everything just so vibrant and jumps out at you. And like, it's still very clearly Hollow Knight, and it's not jarring, but it's also just like such a change, a breath of proverbial fresh air every time you enter a new area, that you're just like, whoa, what is this amazing new place?
Yeah, that's a game getting good across the board in video with simple graphics and simple animations.
Well, I mean, with the 5-6 layers of parallax, I wouldn't say it's the most simple, but
no,
fairly simple.
I mean, it can be run on just about any system. You're not doing super high res, high poly, like massive sculpting or anything like that. It's just some quality pieces of artwork handled well. That's it.
Yep.
Musical score. I remember really liking the boss musics. I don't remember any of them, but I remember liking them.
The one that stands out the most for me was the arena, because they kind of just had like war drums, and I found that they fit really well. The quality of them were really good. I don't know if it was great the whole time, like consistently throughout the experience, but there are moments where the tracks in the background are very solid, and they do add a lot to the experience. So I'd say on the higher level of okay, getting kind of close to good, but I'm not sure if I could say that it's good and that is the main. But yeah, at the same time, it's most of the ones I was aware of were just kind of those boss ones, but the arena one really stood out to me, and I thought that it made the experience seem very epic and fit the theme of what was going on very, very well.
I'm good with the high okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking more or less the same thing where, like, I can't remember any specifics, but I remember it never being jarring and thoroughly enjoying the arena music. I believe we came up with a genre for it, but I can't remember what it was. But there's no phase 2 Ludwig moment in the game for me.
Yeah, no, there's nothing quite like that. It's no Orphan. Orphan sound.
I mean, even the base game in Bloodborne, man, like Cleric Beast and Amelia's theme with all the screaming and
those are top of the line.
Oh,
A wild
yeah,
punk
so
appears.
good.
Welcome, punk. We talked about Bloodborne for like 10 seconds, and all of a sudden, Sergeant Punk.
So voice acting, I think, is actually very interesting in this because they do what I always say that 2D games should do, which is just have barks. Like, you don't necessarily need to have full voice acting, but just some sort of bark to give character to what that character is saying. You know, it gives it a little bit more personality, gives you a way to sort of latch on to that character. And I think they did a fantastic job of it.
So are you saying give it a good to set the standard?
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to both of you about is how do we feel? Like, do we feel like it being fully voice acted would have made it better? Because I actually don't. I think it would have made it worse. But the implementation that they did have is something that a lot of other games could learn from.
My experience with the voice acting felt like it was almost like hearing another language, like their little bug language. I could distinctly recognize individual characters by their voices. Even though they weren't saying words, you could tell it was different people saying them, creating the sounds. There was some degree of emotion to it. Like, you could tell the old guy was disgruntled. He didn't sound happy when he talked. Things like that. So you can definitely recognize voices.
The one that stands out the most for me is the humming.
Yeah.
Because that one is like, just there alone, it's not, you're not speaking, you're not saying anything, but just from basically just grunts and noises that a character makes, you can get so much personality and so much feeling from them, right? Because you can tell it's kind of like a more relaxed, casual, happier tone that they're singing. You don't need them when talking to them. You don't need them to have that in the recording of the dialogue. You could just play that and then have the words there. And whether or not full voice acting is needed or not, full voice acting is very expensive to do. And especially if you want to go to multiple regions, then you need to, of course, have multiple dubs. Whereas if you just do the kind of, not a specific language, but just, emotional conveyance of vocal tones, then you can just, have translation packs for the text. And, it saves you a lot of time, especially for indie games. So I'd have a hard time saying, they needed to do the full thing when stylistically and overall the purpose that a full voice acting dub would have given was already provided by, as Rage was saying, the barks.
And I do honestly feel like if they had tried to fully voice act the script of Hollow Knight, it would have hurt the experience because now you don't have this bug language. Now you just have whatever language you're playing it in.
I've actually been leaning towards good. I've just wanted to hear what everyone else was going to say. Gonna cheese the piss out of it. I'm with you. I love a good cheese. Well, I mean, it is always nice to enjoy the accidental cheese once in a while. I mean, we've all seen The Room, right?
Well,
That is like levels beyond cheese, though. That's just mold now.
I replayed the Outriders demo last night, and I didn't pay attention to the voice acting the first time through, and the writing isn't good, and that isn't good. So like, I'm fresh in the, bad voice acting takes away. And honestly, if it was just text with, without the voice acting, just some noise that gave the character personality, and I could better identify with it, then sure. But oh man, it's not good.
Yeah, if you're gonna voice act well. Otherwise, don't do it.
Yeah.
But I'm at it good. I actually am. I feel like the way they handled the voice acting for the lines added to the world building. It felt more like a different world.
Yeah, like the one that really stands out to me was that humming and singing that you find throughout the level. It just...
Well, that wasn't it's not just finding it, right? That's the map guy that does that.
Yeah,
so they actually also use it as a sound effect audio cue to tell you you're getting close to the map guy, so you know to look for the maps on the map pages on the ground and follow them to him so you can get the map for the zone.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And then, like I say, it's such a contrast to everything else around it that it immediately intrigues the player to say, hey, what's this? I need to find it. And then, they get rewarded for finding it.
And then the next time you find the humming, you just go, ooh, map.
Yeah, the casual market would not sit through a title like Outriders without voice acting, I don't think, no.
The voice acting for it is just bad. So it's like, either if they're going to do it well. But like, I was playing it with a few friends, and like the male voice actor character is like, at least for the tutorial part, is just terrible. And one of my friends just couldn't do it. He's like, this is just bad. So then just every time they talked, it was just like frustrating. Thankfully the other character is a bit better voice, but it's just one of those things where it's like, if you're going to do it, it needs to be done well. Otherwise it can just be such a jarring addition to the game that, you might have been better off just allowing, a bit more, like, you can do a bit more simplistic approach, and then allow a bit more immersion for that way. Or, yeah, I don't know. It's just wild. Like, I was playing some other games and then comparing it to it at the same kind of genre. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Turns out it's not that good. I was playing Division, and I'm like, it's not, Division isn't the best game, but the cutscenes are just so much better, and the voice acting is just so much better.
Hey, Alan God, welcome. Like 70s kung fu movie dub bad. That bad, Pseudo?
No, it's just like, I don't know. You just have to watch it. It's just very, not cliched, but there's just not a whole lot of depth to it. And it's just the way they talk. It's mostly just the writing isn't good as well. So it's really hard for them to really do a lot with it. Like, the one thing that really stands out for me is when, because for people who haven't seen Outriders, you become something called an altered, which is you basically got superpowers now. And
altard?
When your character,
did you just say altard?
Altered. When you're explaining this to one of the main characters in the story, your character's just like, I can do things now, and it's just like, what? Like what? That's how you say you have superpowers.
Actually,
I can do things now, and it says it like that, and it's just like I was thinking back of like every superhero movie needs this. Like when Spider-Man finds out that they can shoot webs, it's like, I can do things now. I can do things now. And it's just like, we're laughing. We're like, I didn't even notice it the first playthrough. I go through it again, and I'm like, that's like the moment that line is just impossible to read. And then just the way to deliver it, I can do things. It's not like they can go like it was just like deadpan monotone. I can do things. I'm just like, what the what?
It's the Keanu Reeves school of acting.
Yeah, the writing definitely isn't helping in that case. But it sounds like the voice cast wasn't having a great time.
Yeah. The only nice thing about if it's not a fully voice acted thing and the writing's kind of is that at least the player will then read it out in their head, and they will determine their own pacing, which they'll be kind of basing off, examples that they've known. So they'd probably, read it differently than what would have been spoken.
Yeah.
But mine, I just laughed for like 10 minutes. I was like, every time we did any sort of special effects, like, hey guys, hey, I can do things now. It's like, oh, you couldn't do things before, right? Like, couldn't be any more descriptive than that.
Stop doing that when I have a mouthful of water.
Stop doing things when I'm drinking.
Stop doing things while I'm doing things. I'm trying to do things now.
It's just like the line, even out of context, just makes no sense. I can do things now. It's like, well, what were you doing before? Like,
You can't
weren't
do
doing
things
anything
now.
It's like I was doing nothing, but now I can. It's like the word, like it was just it's such a I don't know. It was just great. Just I'll try to find the line if I can clip it. I can.
So I've already given it a good for sound effects
Good.
because the hit sounds were simple but reflective, and the parry sounds were informative and tight and crisp, and everything was happening and sounding the moment it was supposed to happen and sound. And as we said, simple game, no real lighting, nothing like that, taking a straight up old school Metroidvania approach to the whole design and the viewpoint. It still had some positional audio and used sound effects to guide you around, as we were just talking about in the voice acting. There's this character who hums and just super, super lovely in the game, and it sounded great, and he sounds super friendly, so you just run up and talk to him, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, hey, this guy is super helpful. I should keep an eye out for this guy. And then one time you'll be in a next zone, and all of a sudden you'll just hear that humming, faintly.
Also,
I know that sound.
Bapanada.
Okay, that was not a sound effect that we were playing. That was just an outside sound, I guess. Yep. Okay. But yeah, and it's not a super difficult implementation. It's not super hard to program. It's a very basic little ad. It probably didn't take them super long to do, because it's just how close are you to this location? Play this audio file and scale its volume based on how far you are away. Take a little bit of time to tune. It's not so bad. And it added so much character and so much charm, and actually altered how you play the game. Made the game more playable and easier to explore. There's nothing bad I can say about. There is nothing bad I can say about the sound effects. They even implemented simple positional audio that greatly heightened the experience of the game. There we go. Yeah, it didn't even fit. Okay. AI. / enemy control. That's a little better, so we're not just talking pure AI, because AI actually means a lot of different things now.
So I would lean towards an okay. Perfectly serviceable. It never really jars you, but there's also nothing particularly special going on.
Yep.
It seemed, and that's fine too. Like, I think we talk about this every time, but not every game needs to have like the most complicated, intelligent AI that acts just like a player would. Like it's hard, and it's a frustrating thing. And if that's not the main purpose, then there's no point. Like, one of the games that has really good AI that I've found was Alien Isolation. Mm-hmm. Something has 2 separate brains. And the point of it is it's supposed to just be able to figure out your style, figure out and find you. And it's supposed to be hard and almost damn near impossible to get away from. But not everything needs that. And AI itself is really hard to make, as well as making a competent AI experience where you're fighting something that, isn't too hard, but also isn't too easy. And I think we bring this up every time too with Pong. Like, if you're making an AI for Pong, as a programmer, you can make it very easy that the AI can just set their paddle to exactly where the ball is. But now it's impossible to win. Or you can set it so that it's delayed, but if it's the same kind of delay each time, then the player knows what angle to hit it at, so that the AI won't get there in time, and then it's too predictable. So it's really hard to find that kind of balance and that kind of behavior of just not too easy and not too hard. And this game seemed to do a nice serviceable job of that, of just, there's a lot of room for improvements where things were kind of very, very predictable, but at least it overall was still fun, so they can still do that as a design choice.
Yeah, and with a game in the Metroidvania style, I think it would actually hurt it if they had gone too hard on the enemy controllers. But at the same time, a lot of the stuff in Hollow Knight was extremely predictable. Just like enemies go into pattern A and then you damage them enough, and then they do pattern B and then you damage them enough, and then they do pattern C and then you damage them enough and they're dead.
Yeah, what they needed to do was have smaller pattern chunks, and that's what From does.
Yeah.
And so basically what Rage is talking about is like, if you watch me on the bosses, that's why I beat them second try. Most of them were second try, even like the difficult ones. I'd see them once, I'm like, okay, I've seen it now. And then every time it starts that motion, I know it's motion for like a reasonable amount of time. Like, I know exactly what it's going to do for the next 10-15 seconds of the fight. The whole pattern is never changing. So what you do is you cut those up. You have the little, maybe the swoop, and then that's the end, and then it might continue on, or it might stop and throw kind of idea. And then you can have slight branches just by breaking them up into chunks, and maybe a couple things it can do, or even a simple one that From uses is having like a 5 or 6 swing combo where they don't do the whole thing. Sometimes they'll do 1 swing, sometimes they'll do 3 swings, sometimes they'll do 2 swings, then they'll do 4 swings out of nowhere and just catch you when you don't expect it, because you didn't realize that was that long of a combo that they can do.
And with From, they do have a lot more into it, like what the enemy or what the player is doing, the actions they're taking, their positioning, all that stuff worked into it. And you don't need that. I feel like Hollow Knight would just benefit a lot more from having those canned choices for the enemies be smaller chunks.
Yeah, it would have made combat significantly harder. I would not have been first, second trying everything, but the bosses that they did get difficult were done difficult well.
Yeah,
I loved both of the Hornet fights, even though the first one was pretty easy. I kind of whooped her. Everyone was all excited, like, oh, he's coming in, and then I just beat it, and everyone was like, oh. It's over. I did the same thing with the Mantis Queens. Oh, yeah, this is my favorite. Oh, you beat it.
Yeah. And I mean, it is still a really cool fight. It's just very predictable once you figure out their patterns.
Passable. Some of the enemies can be highly predictable. However, they are also, what's the term? Very robust?
I would say just generally well designed.
No, I'm trying to say, like, they don't break. Due to the way they're designed, they basically don't break. They always work. I never had a single issue with an enemy breaking or not doing what it was supposed to or anything like that, because everything's so simply done.
Robust is a good word for that.
Yeah. Accessibility,
and that's what I was doing over here, is pulling up the menus and stuff on PC Gaming Wiki.
I mean, it even had like little stuff, like I could go in and change my button assignments from Xbox to PlayStation. It automatically recognized my PlayStation controller. Everything was happy.
And it does let you rebind your controller as well.
Full controller rebinding.
Nice.
There's no color issues in the game due to the color palette and no use of color for anything. Everything is black and white, basically. That's important. There's
full audio sliders, which is always nice.
Full audio sliders, no voice acting, so all subtitled, all written. What more do you want? What are we missing? Is there anything they don't do?
You can't adjust controller sensitivity, and you can't invert y-axis.
There is no y-axis.
Well, you don't do anything with it other than like aim up and down, but you can't invert it.
But it's D-pad controlled typically.
You can also use the stick, though.
Yeah, but you can
You
use
could.
D-pad.
You shouldn't, but you could.
But I wouldn't expect them to invert the stick on a game that's designed to use D-pad. I think that's still a good. Just the design, the way it was designed, it didn't need a lot in accessibility, so they covered all the stuff they needed to, like audio sliders and. I mean, the hardest thing you're gonna get. So maybe we can give it an okay for this. If you're deaf, there's no closed caption for the audio cues, like the humming. So the map guy
you
would be
have
harder to
actually
find.
You would actually have to find the dropped map.
But
I mean, they do have a way for you to find him.
yeah, they do include a way for that because there's map pages leading to him from quite a ways away. Actually, before you get the audio cue, there are typically map pages for you to follow if you find them.
The only thing that I could see being problematic is for people who are color deficient. They would have a hard time because the contrast ratios aren't very high on a lot of enemies in Hollow Knight.
But everything has a black line around the edge.
Yeah, that doesn't help. It all just turns black.
Fair enough.
Like that's basically it.
I would have to hear from them because the way it's designed and you are so white and maybe picking out some enemies might be difficult, but I think it's pretty friendly.
Yeah. For the most part, I would say that this is a very good example of designing things well so that you don't need to do a lot of the accessibility work, but color deficiency would still be a problem.
So you thinking okay?
High okay.
High okay. I'm okay with that. They could have added a contrast filter that could be applied to the render and then make things easier for those people, and it's not a gigantic ad as well. It's just put on top of everything. This is almost a good. It is a great example of designing a game, so not a lot of accessibility options are needed. It could cause issues for color deficient people, and a contrast filter be a good ad. Yeah. Mechanics. We're up to mechanics. This is going to be a discussion, I think.
Yeah. So I think I'm in a minority when I say I think that the combat system in Hollow Knight is why I haven't finished the game. I think I'm in a very small minority when I say that. But for me, like, I love the designs of the systems. I think they all fit together very well. I just don't like it. Haven't started it, still in the backlog. You should try it out. It's a really good game, as you can see by the ratings that we've been giving it so far.
I thoroughly recommend the game. Thoroughly recommend it. Yeah, that's the right response to that, Halligan.
I can be because I'm that bald.
I think you just won. You won the internet rage.
But for me, there's a weightlessness to Hollow Knight's like combat mechanics that are very much the sort of the antithesis of what I like in a combat system. I like a combat system where if I have to be deliberate, I want things to feel weighty. I want them to feel impactful every time I do a thing. But Hollow Knight is very floaty and bouncy, and like that, it fits with the theme, right? Like you're a little bug, you're gonna get bounced all over the place. But the way that it's presented, like if you want a combat system to be that light and floaty and sort of like little bug like little skittery fast things, then I want things to happen as fast as I press the buttons. I can press buttons pretty fast. I like it. I really appreciate what they did, but I don't think it's for me.
Yeah,
What about,
I think. Go ahead, Sudo.
Sorry. I say, what about outside the combat mechanics? Because sometimes combat can really boil down to preference.
Yeah.
And it's like you were saying, like it's a bug, and they went for that kind of floaty, lot of time in the air, jumping around kind of feel for the platformers. And a lot of it is you're kind of jumping around a lot, but like other than the combat stuff, the other mechanics that were there, the way that health worked and healing worked, and the way that charms and everything, and the maps and stuff like that, and like how was that stuff for you?
Combat is literally my only complaint mechanically. Like other than that, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I think your dislike for the combat is primarily taste.
Yeah, I agree. And it's what holds me back from finishing the game.
Yeah, and that's fair. At that point, it's just not a game for you. Right. No game is for everybody. And it is very different combat from a lot of the games that you play.
Yeah.
Very, very different. And it's, it's kind of actually the same reason that you don't really like Dark Souls 3. When you boil it down.
If you're pretty reductionist about it, yes, I can see that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like the even Dark Souls 3 has more like weight and commitment to things.
Yeah,
than
but it's still
Hollow
just
Knight does.
less weight and commitment than previous Dark Souls.
Yes.
And that's why you
definitely.
didn't like it. So this is just that to an extreme, basically.
Dark Souls 3 is more about running away than fighting a boss.
Yeah. There was a lot of running bosses. That's a totally other. We can't start that now. We're already behind time on these reviews. We'll be talking here for hours about just that.
Dark Souls 3 boss design.
Yeah,
do a show where it's just that.
So mechanic wise, combat is a lot simpler in this game, but like you were saying, the bosses weren't meant to be the hardest part of the game. It's a difficult platformer when you get down to it, and the bosses were still beautifully implemented. They're a lot of people's favorite parts, despite the simple combat, and they used a simple mechanic of bouncing away when you hit something to an extreme to force you to actually use it. And their mechanics are really designed such that you're forced to get good with the controls. You have to be tight. You have to be accurate. It was, yeah, I loved it.
So I do want to address something that Val brought up, though. The only thing that Val didn't like about the combat is that the boss fights seem to boil down to just find when you can get a break to heal. That's literally Dark Souls.
That's how I approach basically every boss.
That is what most video games boil down to. Okay, here's an opportunity. I can either heal or attack. Do I need to heal? No, I'm gonna attack.
That's what our Getting Good State Machines video was all about. Was how to find those openings to do your things. Yeah, we talked about 2 hours just on how to find those spots. Ori games did difficult platforming in a more engaging way. Well, Ori didn't have bosses.
Those escape segments were pretty awesome, though.
the escape segments were cool, and they're a boss type event where it pushes the platformer bit, and Ori went for the non-violent, all explorative platformer, whereas Hollow Knight was going for that combative fighting things, different approaches. I agree that Ori is probably the much better platformer.
Oh yeah, that's right. Ori 2 did have boss fights.
I haven't done Ori 2 yet, so I can only talk about the first one.
Didn't you?
Hollow Knight or more,
swear
this
you
is
did
hard
Ori
because
2.
of bullshit enemies while you platform. But that's, well, it's fair. It's the whole situation, right? Hollow Knight's about the entire situation and overcoming the enemies. And once you've been able to overcome the enemies in that situation, then it's much easier to explore around and look around. Is sort of the mechanic they're going for there, the design style they're going for there. Because there is a lot of exploration. Like Ori was, here's a map, you've already got it, you've gone to the zone, you can see what it is, and you just kind of got to get your way through it, so they made it difficult to get through. Whereas Hollow Knight was, figure out where you are. And there's a lot more
do it all
backtrack.
yourself. Bye, bug.
Yeah, there's a lot more backtracking and exploring, and you've got to find the map for the area. So being able to clear out the enemies and have an easier time to explore around, and less issue with not no issue, but less issue with the hazards around, really enabled you to actually find the maps and progress. Hey, you have these neat abilities and you want to use all of them to get through this section. Yep.
Yeah, and it did it exceedingly well.
Yep.
Like Ori is the gold standard for sort of adventure platformers in my mind.
Yeah, Metroidvania adventure platformer. Because it's more of a combatless, which affects its design. Both good, both different, I think. Do you have any problem with a good? Can you ignore your dislike for the combat system and get yourself to a good?
Oh, like everything outside of the combat, I think is actually wonderful. Yeah. In Hollow Knight, like the way that they handled healing, I think is brilliant. The fact that they punish you for failure, but allow you to make up for that failure by being good at the game is just wonderful, wonderful design. I loved the movement capabilities of your bug. I loved the different, even just world mechanics, like the poison, the fast travel, you name it. Just the peg system for your inventory was brilliant. Like everything was very, very well done. I just didn't like the combat.
Yeah, totally fair. Pseudo, you want to add anything to all that?
No, it basically was covered. But yeah, like I said, like everything else was designed with a lot of intention. The healing, I say, was great. I like how, if you do good, you earn the right to heal again. Yep. So it's punished you for taking damage, but allows you to, rectify that by, playing the game well.
Little phantom you had to fight.
Oh no. Did you play Salt and Sanctuary, Val? Did you ever die to a salt bat?
I haven't even seen a salt bat yet.
Oh yeah, you have. You have a couple of times. Yeah,
is that what those bats are that after I die?
Yeah, the bat that's left behind if there's no enemy for your salt to possess, it'll just spawn a bat because that's the lowest level enemy in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what those are. As far as I know, there's no bugs. Anybody confirm?
What are you talking about? The game's full of bugs.
I was just gonna say, like, I was researching this before, and it's like, oh yeah, I can't just Google bugs. I have to Google issues. So it's a smart idea, if you fill your game with bug characters, no one can find any bugs, any software bugs, because your game's already just full of bugs, and it's a feature.
There's some issues around the Xbox One wireless controller, and
that's probably Unity.
Yeah, it is Unity. And there's a GOG Galaxy conflict where they get an empty achievements menu. You just need to uninstall and reinstall GOG Galaxy.
I'd say that's a GOG Galaxy bug.
Yeah. There's also Riva Tuner and Citrix can cause it to crash on startup. But I think that's a Unity thing.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing about when you use the prefab engines is that you'll get the same problem with everyone, and it's and then unfortunately people who know it's a Unity game, it's just like, yeah, it's there, and since it's closed source, you're just stuck with it.
And let's face it, these are all third-party applications that they're running that are doing things with game process that it didn't like.
Since it's
That's
closed
not a
source,
bug.
I don't really know if they can really do anything about that. That's like we have to like remake the game ourselves or pay a lot of money to get Unity source access.
Yeah, I don't even see that as a bug. Like if you're just running it on a clean system, it's not going to have any issues.
No, it is a bug though. It's a compatibility bug.
Are you really worried?
But it's an engine bug. It's not the game bug. It's not their implementation that's causing it. It's the engine.
So I left it as 10 out of 10. All the bugs were great. And then no bugs encountered in most casual playthroughs.
No software bugs, at least.
RNG, was there any?
Nope.
Like the enemies were all pattern based.
Yep.
There aren't really drops. You always get consistent amounts of geo.
Yep.
Enemy spawns are fixed.
Yeah.
There is no RNG, and that is great for this game.
So
And
there wasn't
good control.
If there was any, it wasn't detectable, which is important.
Tight, responsive, and instant. It is required on some bosses, and beautifully implemented. Does that sum it up? Anybody argue with that? I don't think. Have you played it, Pseudo? You played it, right?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
You should, even for a little bit. I think you have access to it.
I probably do. I think I own it, to be honest.
Yeah. You should just boot it up and play it for a little bit.
Played it for a bit.
Yeah, the control is just something to experience. It's so beautifully done.
Yeah, I do own it. I feel like I've experienced the control. I feel like I have played it. I have moved around and jumped around.
Yeah, and it's tight.
Even just watching it, I could tell the controls were good. It's the same thing I get when I watch like Super Meat Boy.
Yeah,
you just know. You can just tell from the responsiveness and the control of the person. It's the stuff that people do while they're moving around in the air that you just don't see in other platformers because they won't be able to do that if they didn't have that type of responsive control that they could trust.
Error report history, 17 crashes. My favorite crash for his Outriders was at the very end when the final movie scene started playing. His whole run ended with a crash.
I'm very happy that I just picked up the Division 2 instead. I'm actually enjoying that a lot. And it's like it came out in 2019. The visuals are just so much better, and it's just a overall better experience design wise too.
Literally at the end of the final cutscene.
I sent a link to my favorite part of the I can do things now.
So Hollow Knight, good.
Yeah, really good game.
Hollow Knight, very good game.
Not without faults.
No game's perfect.
Not without faults, but very good.
One of the best Metroidvanias I've ever played.
Symphony of the Night's coming up soon.
This could very well be my favorite Metroidvania.
That wouldn't surprise me. It's a lot of people's favorite Metroidvanias.
With
Metroidvania.
maybe like the first Ori being right behind it. That was really good too. I really liked that game. Since we were talking about it. Okay. It's no Tuhu Luna Nights. Never played it. Seen it a lot. Never played it. You've stopped saying Metroidvania? What do you say now? Metroid-like? Because Metroid-like is what they really are.
Nah, you gotta play Symphony of the Night.
Still, if Symphony of the Night is the one that earns it the name Metroidvania, Then it wasn't until the PlayStation came along when Metroid started it on the NES. You don't hijack a name that long into it. No, it's Metroid Legacy.
It has a lot of different mechanics. You haven't played the game yet. Wait until you've played the game, then you can bitch.
Fair enough. Yeah, Sergeant, your favorite is Zeldavania? But it's more Metroid. Yeah. Metroidvania.
It's in the backlog, Punk.
Yep. It's coming up. Coming up soon. It is the next one to go on the wall. It's the Zelda 2 of video games. I liked Zelda 2. Anyway, Breathedge.
It's a game.
This is going to be a much different looking review.
It's gonna be interesting.
All right, let's dive into it because we are getting short on time already. We spent a fair bit on Hollow Knight because it's Hollow Knight.
It deserved it. It's a good game.
It needed to be talked about. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with it. World building in Breathedge. Which version will you play? The PS1, PSP, PS4, Xbox? I don't know. I'm going to look at who recommended it or who requested it, and I'll ask them which version I'm playing.
I don't even know what the best version is. I just know if you like Metroidvania, you need to play SOTN.
It's not Subnautica with 3 times the bugs, though, because it's not even Subnautica.
No, it's more differenter.
That's like saying...
It's like
hold on,
the tip of Subnautica. You just get like a piece of it.
Yeah, let's say that's like saying
the scraps of Subnautica.
That's like saying
together.
Clunky Souls is just Dark Souls with more bugs. Is basically the comparison you're making there. It's not true. We'll get into it, I guarantee.
Because if it was
just the tip
Dark Souls with more bugs, I would love Clunky Souls.
World building in Breathedge.
I was on the fence for this because like I kind of liked how things were going. I got confused a bunch of times,
and then it just kind of stops.
Yeah, and then I'm like, what? what? Like the whole jumping around, like future past, can be neat, but I was just like, what? Like what's happening? Like why are we doing this? Where are we? What's going on? Why are we moving so slow?
Passes what I
reaction to most of it.
Passes what I recommend, Sergeant Punk. But honestly, on the world building, I'm on an okay. I'm not on a bad for it.
And I was thinking about this, and I think they did enough, and it's entertaining enough, and it gets you invested enough.
Get a feel for the wacky world the game is set in. And that's really what it boils down to. Is the world is wacky, and it's a wacky world, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But it wasn't really supposed to make a lot of sense. They weren't going for a well-written, well-acted story. They were going for what they made.
Irony. Lots of irony. And silliness.
Yep. Silliness is what you got. The only non-Japanese game I've seen that had you collecting so much underwear. So there's that.
I mean, you're not wrong.
As soon as I found those panties with the little rabbit tail on the back, I was in. I was like, I want all the underwear. Give them all to me.
Character writing in Breathedge, I would actually say a pretty good okay.
Yeah, I'd give it a solid okay. Pseudo?
Yeah, I just like the term a pretty good okay. Yeah, that's what it describes it. It's like, it's a pretty good okay.
I calls it like I sees it.
Yeah, I mean it's not. I gotta say, like I think the word like for our rating system, I think okay maybe has some kind of more negative connotations. Where like an okay is perfectly fine. Like
it's okay.
Like a game doesn't have to push up to good for every category. Like a solidly okay game is still a good experience, especially if it's priced properly. And the characters that were there, they served their purpose and they were written with intent, and they were done. They were done to what they needed to be, and it added quite a bit to the experience.
Yeah, like I actually legitimately really like the spacesuit. I think he's really well written. I also have a theory that while you are playing through the lens of man, that the spacesuit is actually the main character.
I would agree with that.
The writing around Babe was pretty good. I thought it was interesting. If Deus skipped a lot of it, but there's actually quite a bit of like character background given to the grandfather as well. That's available. I don't know why people would seek it out, but it's there.
The game just never gives you any incentive or reason or care to go get. I mean, it's okay written, but it's just there's no. It's not. It's fine. It's fine. Whatever you pick up is fine. It's not going to turn you off. It's not. I can do things, but.
Oh God.
It was enough. But it's really going to boil down to, do you like the game's humor? If you don't like the game's humor, you're not going to like anything about the game, because everything is humor, and it's a very opinionated humor. So that's why if you hear other reviews, you're going to hear polar reviews on this game. I hear people say, I love this game, and I hear people say, I hate this game, I couldn't play it for more than 5 minutes. And those are the two opinions I typically hear of it.
And I get the feeling that going through this review, it's going to be right between them.
Yep. Yep, it's a pretty solidly okay game. The storyline is okay as well.
Yep.
There is enough story to keep it moving forward.
And there's some twists that happen, and you're just kind of like, okay.
We're okay. And make it okay and give some incentive to continue. Yeah.
It was a very silly game.
It was a very, very silly game. If you like very silly humor and sort of on the nose edginess at times, then you probably like it. You'll probably laugh. Was it okay or bad? Was the performance okay? I remember it hanging up and stuff a lot for me.
Yeah, it hitched a lot on your system specifically.
Which it shouldn't.
I was just gonna say, if you're experiencing problems, then
But I've seen people with less powerful systems that it doesn't hitch on.
Okay.
Like it seems to be specifically your machine that it doesn't like.
it could happen too, since it is streaming and stuff like that. So there's not like a full guideline, but I think a big part of it too is just, were you able to maintain a consistent frame rate? Were there any kind of performance dips at certain areas and stuff like that? That'll kind of scale between different systems, because if it's happening on your machine, chances are if there's a certain room, that'll dip your frame rate, or if it's just wonky all over the place, and chances it'll happen on other machines too.
I think it was more the hitches. I don't really remember frame dips, although if you whip the camera around real quick, you definitely get some stutter and stuff, but
yeah, that's the occlusion trying to unocclude things.
yeah, I know. Didn't see Breathedge streams, but now that you said that, well, hard pass for me. Really? You didn't like Outer Worlds? Do you not like Outer Worlds, Howling God? That makes me sad. I loved that game.
Outer Worlds was great.
I loved that game. I think it's an okay then. Game runs
it's
fine.
Nothing to write home about.
Games were stable enough. Yeah, like we said, it's the review is probably going to just split most people's opinion of the game. Animation.
Very silly. This is the one place where I would actually give it a good, just because of how silly most of the animations are.
And detailed.
but there's a lot of reuse as well. It's just kind of like,
I loved the
don't know.
dielectric chicken where the little feathers flapping on it.
And the general chicken, general chicken's amazing.
Yeah,
I'd be
I'm
fine
at a
giving it
good.
a good.
Yeah, I'm at a good.
Yeah. As well, since we're moving into style as well, I was really surprised with the look of this game. Like just the quality of the graphics. Like I don't know what I was
The
expecting.
fidelity.
Yeah, like I was expecting more of that cartoon shading and more of that kind of silliness, but like there was a lot of realistic lighting, and there was times in the cutscenes I'm like, is it just something that kind of happens when you paid like when you're interested in graphics? I was staring at the hands. I'm like, whoa, the suit hands look real good. I'm like, wow, what the hell? Yeah, like the lighting, the reflection, and the scattering, the subsurface scattering. What the fuck? What are they using? Like what is it? And I was like, oh wow.
I feel like it was somebody who was just really into writing shaders. Oh, like shit. All right, let's make a game.
Yeah. So style.
I'm like the quality is there.
The quality is there. The consistency isn't, though.
Yeah, that was the thing. The quality is there. Consistency, it's kind of a bit all over the place. Like I was saying, the reason why I was expecting it to be more cartoony is because, especially at the start, it is cartoony. Like the coffins and stuff, they're kind of shaded unrealistically. They're a bit more of that, softer stuff where you kind of have like pastel tones and that kind of stuff where it still looks good, but then it would kind of jump around and all of a sudden, like, well, okay, all of a sudden it looks really realistic, and then all of a sudden it jumps back to kind of being that slightly kind of silly cartooning style, kind of like the same kind of feel you get from like We Happy Few, where like the quality is still really good, but the way that it's shaded and the way that things are colored kind of gives you that more kind of silly look and the more kind of less seriousness, which is a stylistic choice. But I found that this game kind of had a bit of both, and it seemed like at one point it's like we wanted it to look really good, but like I said, if it's not consistent, it was a bit jarring to me that at the start, like, okay, my expectations are now this silly kind of stuff, and then now we're kind of bouncing around quite a bit. But overall, like I said, I'm fine with okay. I wouldn't take much for me to push it to good, because I'd still enjoyed both. I still enjoyed how everything looked, but it's like I said, it's a consistent thing for me.
I'm okay with an okay for the consistency.
Yeah, that's the one thing that would stop me from giving it a good, is the lack of consistency.
Yeah, it was on Unreal Engine, and Unreal Engine's just like, God, the lighting is so good. It's nothing I noticed when playing Space Dwarves, and you're playing why can't I remember the name? Like, they've got the Galactic
Deep Rock Galactic.
There we go.
Just call it
ERG.
Space Dwarves.
Yeah, I know. It's
Everybody knows
Space Dwarves.
Everybody knows Space Dwarves when you say it.
Yeah, but
Everybody
Space Dwarves is the
knows
one that has that, that silliness style to it, but also has like pretty nice lighting to it, but it's not as jarring. Like it's still a complemented experience.
Yep. Yep. It stays, well, the lighting is high quality lighting onto silly low poly assets.
And it works.
Yeah, it looks beautiful because it's all consistent. You can have good lighting on it, just like I've seen pixel art games with great lighting. As long as the pixel art is all consistent, the great lighting doesn't throw off the pixel art.
Yeah, it's the shading that's just fantastic. I don't know, shading is starting to. There's a lot of people getting really good at shading lately, and it's just fantastic. Even like Valheim. Like Valheim is very simple assets, very simple textures. It's just the shading that just makes everything so damn pretty.
Yeah. Musical score in Breathedge is okay.
Really?
Really?
Like
Was it bad?
the use of the music isn't very good, but I love the music.
I don't remember the music.
You didn't spend enough time inside then.
Oh, I got annoyed by the music and turned it off is what it was. I always turned it off in the places because
nah. Bleh. I honestly, like, that's super subjective. The use of the music I thought was terrible. The fact that you only get it when you're like actual music when you're in your little pod, and then occasionally you'll get like some ambient stuff when you're out in space. It's just kind of bleh. But I loved their choices of music for when you're in the pod itself. I thought that they fit the theme of the game really, really well, except for one song, which is just like a banging EDM track. And I don't know why it's in the game, but it's amazing.
That's why it's in the game. They got their hands on it. They're like, yeah, throw this in. I mean, I'm at it okay. I mean, where they used it, it was good, but it wasn't used enough or well enough throughout the game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think is a good summation of how they handled the music.
Yeah.
Without giving away the spoilers and stuff there, but yeah, the voice acting thought was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think I have any complaints.
No, I really liked the robot filters and stuff on the coffins beating you and questioning you. And while I got annoyed with it every time I died after a while, I was like, okay, enough of the scene, just love my scene. I did like it.
The suit was really good, and I really enjoyed the suit.
The suit did it well, yeah.
100% the protagonist of the game.
Yep.
And I think it's probably one of the main, like a main contributor, like one of the main features of this game is the voice acting that was there.
Acting in the game was a highlight and made the humor. The delivery of a lot of the jokes was important.
Yeah, the whoever did the suit, I don't have the name, did a fantastic job of their delivery.
Yeah. Sound effects? Either. Okay.
They're fine.
There are sounds, and they generally sound like what they should. That's all I can say about them. They're there. It's like, zzz, yeah, that's a generic drill. That's right. That's what a generic drill sounds like. There were sound effects. Yep, that is
even
the summary.
when it didn't make sense for there to be sound effects. Like you can hear the drill when you're in space, but it would be weird not to have that sound effect, so they put it in.
The game is just ridiculous and silly. I mean, you can hear things in space. It's the way it is. Deal with it. It even like that was one of the things that threw me off, and we'll talk about it more when we get to mechanics. AI. Okay.
There wasn't really any, and what was there was just kind of like move towards you and shoot.
Yep. Is not really much. However, it also didn't really break at any point. There was no enemies getting stuck or anything like that. They, for the most part, got to you and hit you and shot at you and missed you sometimes and didn't miss you others. And I felt it was pretty fair that if I was moving to get away from them, they wouldn't hit me very often. And if I stood still, they'd hit me fairly often. And that was one of my favorite things about Dead Space, how when you were actually in deep space, zero gravity, pretty much all sounds were muted other than Isaac's breathing. Yes, when we played Dead Space, we gushed and gushed and gushed and gushed and gushed about Visceral's audio design in every single one of the 3 games.
No. The 2 games. There were only 2.
I realized that there were only 2, but the sound effects in the one that didn't exist were one of the good parts of it. Accessibility. I don't think there was much in this game. I don't even think there was dual inversion.
Let's check. PC Gaming Wiki to the rescue.
There was a keyboard remapping. There's not controller remapping. There's no controller Y inversion.
Text and voice language. There were subtitles. That's about it.
Yeah, that's a bad. It has
Controller
subtitles.
unavailable, disable.
Otherwise, if you cannot play it the way it is, probably can't.
There seems to be horizontal inversion, at least for the controllers.
Yeah, there was one direction inversion. One of my pet peeves. You know how hard it is to implement the inversion on the other axis? It's a copy, paste, and a variable change.
Well, even then, it's like it can be difficult and like a self-made thing, but like they're using a game engine, so like other people have done this in Unreal. They don't have to modify the engine, right? It's nothing too new. And if they're doing it for one, and then like you're saying, they can still do it for the other axis.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
pretty sure
that's
Unreal
the big
handles
thing.
that for you.
That's the big thing, is that it's already done on one. Sure, it's a bit of work to get it done on one, but once it's done on one, doing the other axis is already done for you. Just implement it, for God's sake. My brain is backwards and I can't do anything about it.
It does have full keyboard rebinding as well. That should probably be called out.
There is also full keyboard rebinding, but I've never played a keyboard and mouse game that doesn't have keyboard rebinding.
You weren't playing many games during the console port era then. You weren't playing anything during that era. You either playing WoW or nothing.
Yep, pretty much. That about sums up that era of gaming for me.
I remember that was like a big deal with the Source engine, is that you could rebind your keys because a lot of games back then you just couldn't. That was just it. And that one you could rebind everything, and it was everyone's like, "Ooh, this is a big deal." Other games are just like, "Nah, these are just controls. Deal with them." Even sometimes the mouse sensitivity was just like you had to change it on external.
It was a config file.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah, even like, well, I guess, yeah, if I go back to the old enough, like Fallout and Moo and stuff, there was no rebinding of keys.
There was also just a whole generation of like the OG Xbox and the PS2 and the Xbox 360 and the early PS3 where games weren't made for PC anymore, so you didn't get anything. You just got the controller, the direct port from the console, and things were made console first. And it just sucked.
That would suck. Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't playing many games other than WoW, which was fully made for PC and completely key rebindable and moddable. Mechanics were, I'm actually kind of leaning bad. It was way too fucking grindy.
It's
really
slow.
grindy, very slow, guns shot randomly, your tools broke too quickly, the collection amounts were very small.
And they did all that because the levels were small and the area you had to explore were tiny and you were extremely limited into your own little bubble. Therefore, they had to make the game's length longer by making you do collection tasks.
It seemed like more punishing mechanics than anything that's like provided any sort of kind of fun. And like slow can be done okay, like a relaxed play pace can be done fine, or slower start to a faster start can be done, but there needs to be something that is there still. Like a game we all played recently was Valheim, and the start of the game can be pretty slow because you're just walking everywhere and your skills are low, but there's stuff around. The game's still pretty to look at, and then there's the build
things.
You can build things, which was literally the only reason I wanted to play that game.
Even like the boating, there was still like nice music that was going on. There was a wind mechanic that kind of made you, still do something and pay attention to something. So you weren't just like, all right, hold forward and I'm just going to like look away or walk away for a bit and then come back because, nothing's going to happen. Or, there's a serpent that attacks you. There's at least something that happens. A lot of time I was watching, you were just like floating there and your mechanic was, okay, well, I'm going in a straight line. I'm going to keep going in a straight line, but I'm going to stare at my oxygen tank and see if I die. And then sometimes you would just die. And I guess I got to do it again later. Or maybe I didn't get that full speed kind of kicked up, but it was just, everything felt slower. And I would have rather them have a larger map, but you move faster than having the smaller map they had and you move slower. Because as long as you're moving fast, they could have put in like, maybe there's rocks that are flying around a lot. You kind of have to move out of the way or like something, right? At least you feel like you can kind of zip around. You feel like you're doing something rather than just like that slow, just methodical pacing, or have audio, or have like a radio or something that's in the spacesuit, or have a conversation with the spacesuit or something. Like there was just
my God, you're
not a whole lot.
so slow at the beginning of the game.
If you could build a portable radio out of the the plastic and wire and stuff that you get in the very starting area, I honestly wouldn't have minded how slow you were nearly as much.
They could use all those radio stations that they've already put work into developing and pipe it into the suit with a basic craft. And that was another thing that I wanted to get into. The crafting in the game didn't feel like crafting at all. It felt like continuous fetch quests, because you're not working off of super general ingredients. Everything needed, like, you need to go get this for this, you need to go get this for this, you need to go get this for this. And you're going to these areas which are designed just to give you the one thing you need in order to make the thing you need to get to the next area. And it doesn't become about crafting. You're never building bases. You're never building anything. You're doing fetch quests over and over and over. And it's just a fetch quest simulator. The whole game is just a big fetch quest simulator.
It had that same feel that kind of Void Bastards has, but Void Bastards doesn't call it a crafting system fully. It's like they know what it is, and you're collecting the required quest items to move forward.
Yeah.
And that's like the thing with crafting games is that the point of it is that you're supposed to have these resources and feel like you're collecting something and feel like you started from nothing and now you have a lot, and now you can build the tools you need to be able to get forward. And games that kind of do it well is they don't force the player into something, but it's kind of like suggested as, oh, there's this thing you can craft, and then having these items is kind of what you need to get somewhere else. Like, if you need more oxygen, you need to craft something that gives you more oxygen. You need to go faster, you need to craft something that makes you go faster. It's not necessarily the tool just for that, because they can use for other things, but they could just craft it without being explicitly told to, and without it being explicitly hand-fed the required material for it.
Oh, also, you don't really get the car until you've already finished the game. I didn't even ever build it. By the time you get the resources you need for it, you're basically done.
You can build the car in the first area. You actually can.
I know.
It's just pointless, because at that point you get the ship and then it doesn't matter.
I know, but you can build it at the very, very end of that first area, right before you get the ship that makes all your other vehicles pointless, that you never leave that ship again. So it's basically the end of the game. You get the car. You'll never even need it. Most of the people I know that got the car didn't get it until New Game Plus. That's when they built it. And then they put it around there. Or like end of the game where you get to come back and keep playing or something like that. Like very, very end. And there's nothing left to do in the game, because it's such a tiny area. Because they have this notion of oxygen in space, and they're trying to create the space thing. Well, you can't do Subnautica in space. It sounds like and seems like, and like, oh yeah, no air under the water, no air in space. They totally translate. No, they totally don't, because underwater you have the surface to get air anywhere you are, and it allows you to explore the entire surface. You can go far, and then there's life, there's creatures, there's things moving, there's things to explore. Space is just like you feel like you're moving slower in space because the stuff is so far away you can see forever. And it's just slowly approaching you. Like, I can see it even though it's 6 kilometers away. In the water, you've got different obstacles near. Things feel almost a little more claustrophobic. You've got things to swim through. You've got little caves you can go down and find, come up and explore. There was way more exploration and way more depth to it because of that. When you are in space suddenly with oxygen, you're just confined to this little ball. Like, this is your limit. This is your entire universe, because your oxygen runs out if you get this far away, and you've got to turn around and come back. And that's it. That's all you've get. Yeah.
Fully agree. It's a huge design problem with the game. They needed to give you a more easily accessible way to get more oxygen quicker.
Their only mechanic they used to give you oxygen was basically, here's a ship, here's a ship, here's a ship. And they just put ships and rooms scattered everywhere that you can jump in and get your oxygen. They actually had them spaced out so well that I never even needed my additional oxygen consumables once I actually was able to start exploring. Yeah. Bugs are bad. Save often.
Are they?
Yes. I lost progress so many times from getting stuck in doorways from moving a little bit too fast.
I only saw that happen to you once. I mean, that was solvable by just triggering the door again.
Oh, no, I see. I had already given up because that literally happened to be like 6 or 7 times through my playthrough. That's why I didn't even think to close the door. I was just like, fuck it, I'm stuck again. You remember seeing Deus get fused to a door? Yeah, it happened like literally 6 or 7 times. There was one time I was coming back from a mission and I bumped the side of a door as I was coming through it, and I was just stuck there, and I was never able to move again. Fucking great.
You're just covered in glue.
That was all that lead paint and didn't let it dry.
Any sides of anything, you will get stuck and be back to last checkpoint.
Hi, Mole.
Someone got stuck in a door. Gift subs. Welcome, old CJ Bro 409, Lone Toffee, and the rest are lurkers I don't recognize. But welcome to the table, all. Hey, where? Nice to see ya. Nice to see you. Welcome. Yeah, save often, save continuously. Do not touch the sides of anything. You will get stuck and be back to the last checkpoint, which are few and far between. After doing the same area like 3 times from that, I almost quit the game at the beginning. I almost quit. And that's when I just started avoiding sides and edges. Did you notice that as I came up to doors, I was always very careful to be right in the middle as I floated through them? That's why.
I did notice that.
It was very, very on purpose, because I have been stuck multiple times indoors. Multiple times.
Little tidbit. Ella also played this game, and Ella decided to do his first playthrough on permadeath.
Oh no.
He actually made it quite a long ways. And then at a certain point, after getting stuck on objects quite a few times and almost dying, he was just like, I'm taking save backups. Fuck you, chat. I'm backing this up. No more permadeath.
Yeah, because getting stuck on stuff is such bullshit in this game. It's constant. It was so bad. So bad. I almost quit the game. The RNG is good, though.
Yeah, I would say the RNG was actually very appropriately used. Like having random stuff come out of the, random from a loot table come out of the various things that you can break is totally fine, because there's also like dedicated resources that you can get as well. And
yep. And even then, there's not that much RNG to what comes out, other than like the garbage piles. That's like the most RNG, and that's garbage piles. And there's still a loot table. It's just a fairly big one.
Yeah. They've got the largest loot table.
The control is okay. Having played it, it was okay. I forget, did the game even have enemies? Yeah, there were.
Yep.
There even bosses.
3 different kinds of enemies.
They had the security drones,
also the boss,
the coffins,
and the turrets.
Yep. Yep, that's it. The controls were okay. They mostly did what you wanted them to do.
Reminders about the stabilizer button.
Don't forget the stabilizer button. It was
you were struggling pretty hard until I reminded you that they told you about it at the very beginning of the game.
Yeah. So my nitpick beef that I had that always threw me off in this game is that when you let go of forward, you stop moving.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't like that either.
And it just, what? What friction in space has caused me to stop? Tell me, game. Tell me now. Yeah. That drove me insane. That was my biggest nitpick about the control and mechanic. That we can put that in the mechanic. That gets the bad in the mechanic. So the writing was okay. And the video was okay. And the audio was okay. But the gameplay sucked. That about sums it up.
Yep.
Any arguments? Any disagreements? Do we have to defend our stance on this? Does anybody disagree? No? I didn't think so. Not even going to look anymore. Just going to look away and assume everybody agrees with me. Yep.
If that isn't telling about the world.